Christina, I told you my mom is only staying for a couple of nights. It's a couple of nights too many, Christina replied, her voice filled with a weariness that had become a permanent part of her life. When will you two finally stop fighting? It's impossible to get through to either of you, Paul sighed, throwing his hands up in exasperation before leaving the room. His exit was a clear sign that he wasn't open to further discussion. His decision was final, and his mother's visit would go ahead as planned. We're not done here. Christina wasn't about to give up so easily. Yes, we are. You are both equally important to me. I don't want to be torn between you, trying to make peace, Paul insisted. I honestly tried to win her over for 5 years. I was kind, open, and I gave her presents. I even gave her the grandson she always wanted. And what did I get in return? Rudeness, insults, and a mountain of dirt flung both behind my back and to my face. And the cherry on top? A demand for a DNA test to prove you're his father. Don't you think your mum went a little too far? Christina was speaking with a sincerity that spoke volumes. 5 years ago, after only a few dates, she had agreed to marry Paul. His family had given her a chilly welcome. They believed their precious son deserved better than a single mum with a child. They conveniently overlooked a few small details like her 2 university degrees, her prestigious job before maternity leave, the prospect of a promotion upon her return, and her sharp wit and strong moral compass. In any other situation, Christina wouldn't have given a second glance to someone like Paul, a mediocre student at best. But fate offered her a very limited choice. Get married and raise her son in a complete family, or remain a single mom whispered about by the neighbors. Beautiful, clever, and confident, Christina had always strived to be the best. In academics, sports, and dance, she was unmatched in everything she put her mind to. The one area she never gave her time to was relationships with the opposite sex. She seemed not to notice the adoring looks from her male classmates, deliberately ignoring them or quickly turning a potential suitor into a friend. By the time she finished school, she had managed not to have a single romance. Her friends couldn't understand her, as even the most desirable boys had been rejected. Gradually, the rejected suitors moved on to more available options and disappeared from her life. She never told anyone the reason for her behavior. It was mundane and simple. Her father's daily arguments with her mother and his unseemly behavior had led her to a decision. She would not repeat her mother's fate. No man, no problems. This would allow her to dedicate all her time and attention to her studies, career, and self-improvement. Christina was an only child, so she had no one to confide in about her fears. If she had a close friend or an older sister, they would have explained that her father's behavior was not normal and that there were many decent men in the world capable of creating a strong and loving family. Chris, that cute new boy from the parallel class, was asking for your number again. Her friends actively tried to meddle in her personal life. Cute? Have you seen him? He's gorgeous. The body, the face, and he's so well dressed. Just give him your number. What are you waiting for? You know, I'm not interested in that. If I didn't know you from primary school, I'd think you were into girls, her friend laughed. Oh, that's an idea. Let's tell all the handsome boys that I'm chasing you. Christina was thoroughly fed up with her friends' almost daily suggestions, declarations, and attempts at matchmaking. Let's not, please. I don't need that kind of reputation right before graduation. Her friend Maria smiled. Even she didn't know why Christina was so actively avoiding boys. After school, she enrolled in 2 prestigious universities, managing to combine her full-time studies at one with her part-time studies at the other. Within a few years, she had a degree in law and another in translation, specializing in English and German. It was the perfect combination for working abroad, and moving to another country was her ultimate dream. Thanks to a successful dissertation defense, she quickly found a good job that involved foreign travel and the possibility of a transfer to one of their overseas branches. All her plans went up in smoke one evening when she met him. She had stayed late at work, and it was nearly impossible to catch public transport. Seeing a luxury car pull up to the bus stop, she felt a little scared. However, a tall, athletic, and handsome young man stepped out and offered her a lift home. Naturally, she politely declined. He then parked his car and walked her home. During their hour-long walk, they managed to talk about everything under the sun. It turned out they had a lot in common. a love for books, music, and sports. The young man captivated her with his manners. He was well read, knowledgeable, and attentive. The story started like a cheap romance novel: beautiful dates, expensive gifts, and conversations that lasted until dawn. Luke was amazing. She had never met anyone like him. Most importantly, he was the complete opposite of her father, who was for Christina the epitome of what a man should never be. It was no surprise that she fell in love. The feelings she finally allowed to take over her heart were so beautiful, new, and exciting that she was ready to do anything for him. She poured all her passion into this relationship. Even her colleagues, with whom she had always maintained a strictly professional relationship, started noticing a change in her. "Christina, you look especially mysterious today. Our quiet little girl must be in love." The boss's secretary couldn't hide her delight at the change that had come over her. The new girl was well liked at work, as they could see how hard she tried. Unfortunately, behind the veil of her new romance, she failed to notice the obvious. The young man never spent holidays with her, avoided public places, never introduced her to his friends, and was almost always busy on the weekends. A more experienced girl would have guessed the reason for his behavior. For Christina, the truth was revealed only on the day she saw 2 lines on a pregnancy test and decided to give him the good news. "Luke, I have a very big and wonderful present for you," she said, blushing as she handed the young man a small box tied with a neat golden ribbon. "My love." At that word, her legs simply turned to jelly. "I told you you shouldn't give me presents. You don't have the financial means for it, and it's a man's job to do that. This gift is special. I'm sure you'll be happy." However, the look on his face showed a whole range of emotions, none of which were joy, happiness, or delight. His beloved features were distorted by a grimace of disgust and anger. He sharply closed the box and threw it on the ground. "I hope this is a joke. Luke, you're not happy." She was lost, unsure how to react. "Are you out of your mind? Have you no sense? Luke, what's wrong with you? This was a shock to me too, and it will greatly affect my plans, but it's our baby, the fruit of our love. It's the fruit of your endless stupidity. Do you honestly think I need this? Or did you plan this all out? Did you want to extort money from me? Well, the most you can expect is for me to pay for an abortion. After that, you'll disappear from my life and my family's life." "Your family? Have you suddenly gone deaf?" Christina looked at this rude, cold, and selfish man and couldn't believe that this was the same perfect, loving, and gentle Luke she had been dating for almost 6 months. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on. Are you so naive that you didn't figure it out? I'm married. I have no intention of leaving my wife for you or for this." He waved his hand dismissively towards her belly. "I won't have an abortion. I found out in school that I have serious health problems, and it's not an option for me," she said, her voice hollow, as if all her life force had been drained from her. "Oh, stop it. Girls like you give birth like cats." Seeing her so bewildered and not knowing what to say, he seemed to soften a little. It seemed she wasn't lying about her health. "I'll pay for the best clinic. They'll do it as correctly and carefully as possible. It won't affect your health. You'll have plenty of time to have more babies, but this one must not be born. I don't need these problems. My father-in-law is a very influential man. If he finds out I've cheated on his daughter, it will be bad for both you and me." He spoke in such a formal tone as if he were a salesman for a luxury car that any remaining feelings she had for him vanished. "Don't worry, I won't ask for anything from you. Goodbye." Christina turned and walked away towards the bus stop. After what she had just heard, she couldn't even cry. Luke wasn't about to let her have the last word. He caught up with her, grabbed her arm roughly, and spun her around to face him. "You don't seem to understand what I said. You are not having this baby. What are you going to raise him on? You only just graduated. You have no home, no savings. Are you going to live on benefits? Where will you live with him?" "With your alcoholic father." She had trusted him with her most secret and tragic past, the one her father had created for her. "Luke, I'm not changing my mind. If you don't want the baby, I'm not forcing him on you. Let me go. I'm going to be late. Your son will grow up to be a juvenile delinquent. He'll hate you for the life you give him." He seemed ready to tear her apart, still holding on to her arm. She was now seriously concerned that he was going to push her down the stairs. "It could be a girl," she said, suddenly realizing that all the feelings she had for this man had evaporated, bursting like a bubble. If my poor financial situation frightens you so much, I'm prepared to sign an agreement that I will not declare you as the father or ask for money. A strange premonition told her, to protect herself and her unborn child. And in return, the man's voice became intrigued. In return, you will never show up in our lives or claim any right to see the child. Are you mad? Why would I want that little brat? So you've decided. Let's go. No, I'll drop the contract myself and we'll get it notarized tomorrow. I'm afraid your competence in this matter won't be enough. I'll pick you up at 10. They parted as enemies. She had never felt so empty in her life. The last shreds of her faith in men's decency had burned away, leaving a disgusting residue in her soul. All men, she concluded, were the same: unreliable, irresponsible, and dishonest. The next day, they signed the agreement and parted ways forever. At least, that's what Christina hoped with all her heart. It hurt, and it was frustrating to become a single mom. But deep down, she didn't regret a thing. She had never wanted to get married, but she had always dreamed of becoming a mother. She was an only child, and her mom had decided not to have more children after her father started drinking. The girl had always been jealous of her friends who had siblings. She especially loved looking after younger children. And now, at last, she was going to have her own baby. Christina knew it would be difficult, but she couldn't bring herself to have an abortion. The risk was too great that this baby might be her only chance at motherhood. The doctor who was monitoring her pregnancy supported her decision to keep the baby no matter what. You know, so many women are being treated for infertility right now. Some had a serious illness in their youth. Some had an abortion. Some seem to be healthy, but they can't have children. You can find a man with a child, but infertility doesn't make many men happy. Besides, an obstruction like yours often clears up after childbirth. The body heals itself. Don't worry, you're smart, educated, and you have a job. Some people in worse situations have children, and don't worry about it. Plus, there are support measures for single mothers. You could even live in a special hostel with your child for a while. Some girls live there for quite a long time. Find jobs and look after each other's kids. I have a place to live and a job. I also hope I can go back to work after maternity leave. And even more so, why are you so doubtful? If you change your mind, you have no more than 2 weeks. I have no doubts about my decision. Children don't ask to be born. If parents aren't smart enough to take precautions and not get pregnant, they shouldn't blame the child for it. Christina was glad that someone was supporting her. Her mum was the second person to do so. She was worried about her daughter's future but tried not to show it, promising to support her in any decision she made. She was able to explain to her boss that she was willing to work remotely if possible and come in part-time after the baby was born. They accommodated her, guaranteeing her job would be waiting for her. The boss wasn't willing to lose such a promising young woman. 7 months later, she went on maternity leave, and a month after that, on New Year's Eve, the most wonderful and long-awaited person in her life was born, her son. As she had feared, her father didn't take the news of his grandson well. While she was working and renting a room, rarely visiting home, he limited himself to insults and mockery. So, our perfect Christina got pregnant out of wedlock. Who's the father? Did she settle a debt with her boss or find someone a bit more low-key? Christina tried not to listen to the nasty things her father always said. It seemed his supply of filth was endless. But when she returned home from the hospital with her son, the real nightmare began. Her father, a drunk, would create daily scenes demanding that she and the baby get out of his house. Even periodic visits from the police had no effect. After 6 months of this life, she was determined to leave her parents' house. Without an income and with a child, it was difficult. So her mum proposed a solution that seemed logical at the time: get married. This option seemed to be the only one available. She would get the status of a married woman, the neighbors would stop gossiping, and her child would have a complete family. But these reasons were just an excuse. In reality, Christina was mentally and physically exhausted. She simply didn't have the strength to think of another way out of her situation. One evening, sitting in the kitchen, they decided she should choose the quietest, most peaceful, and non-drinking man possible. This way, there was at least a glimmer of hope that her husband wouldn't turn out to be a copy of her father. Fortunately, there were many suitors. From them all, she chose the one she considered the most worthy. Paul lived in the next neighborhood and worked as a car mechanic. After barely finishing high school, he joined the army, and for several years after, he worked for himself, often changing jobs. He's no superstar, Christina's mum often said. Most importantly, he got along wonderfully with little Alex, who would not go to anyone but his mum and grandma. Paul was ready to get married, and the child didn't bother him, so they didn't delay the wedding. After a modest ceremony, the young family moved into Paul's flat, which his grandmother had given him in his school years. It was so unusual for Christina to wake up and go to sleep without her father's screaming and insults. Her husband was indeed calm, but he was a little jealous. She explained it as his lack of confidence in himself. He treated her son with care and tenderness. Christina simply couldn't believe her own good fortune. The only thing that worried the young woman was the attitude of her future husband's mother. She didn't hide her contempt for her new daughter-in-law. Although the difference in social standing was more on the son's side than the new bride's, the woman believed that this person had trapped her son and forced him into marriage. After the wedding, she moved into the young couple's flat and threw a terrible scene with insults and breaking crockery. Her husband didn't stand up for Christina, justifying his mother's behavior by saying she had always been jealous of his girlfriends. This behavior became the norm in their relationship. Calm and attentive on normal days, her husband would change completely around his mother. She made him dance to her tune. That's why Christina decided to minimize her contact with her in-laws. Neither she nor her son went to a single one of their family holidays. The situation could have changed when Christina and Paul had a daughter. They came to her parents' house to introduce them to their granddaughter. The new grandma couldn't keep it in for long. She doesn't even look like one of us. First, she dumps her own child on my son, and now she's had another one with God knows who. Mum, stop it! These are my children. Don't you dare insult me and my wife with those insinuations. It was clear that the man was intervening unwillingly. From childhood, he had been taught not to contradict his mother. I was waiting for my foolish son to find a tart like her. Now, my eldest daughter-in-law is a smart, beautiful, and educated woman. They live abroad. She has a prestigious job and she doesn't bring random children to her husband. That last statement was the final straw for Christina. She packed the children up and left her in-laws' flat, firmly resolved never to see those people again. 3 years passed. The children started nursery and Christina was able to go back to work. Thankfully, her 2 degrees and excellent knowledge of her field paid off. She no longer tried to make contact with her in-laws. Paul visited them alone. Not long ago, his elder brother and his wife returned. They had not seen fit to attend Paul and Christina's wedding. After returning, they also made no effort to socialize or even get to know them. A year after the birth of their daughter Daisy, Christina's father passed away, and her mum finally had the opportunity to live for herself. Her many attempts to divorce her drinking husband had ended in beatings and stalking. Once, her father almost burned down the flat her mother was living in after she left him. After that, she gave up all attempts to leave, simply trying to survive. Christina supported her mother financially, and her mother, in turn, was a great help with the children. The children had no idea that besides their beloved grandma, they had another grandma, grandpa, and uncle. There were occasional conflicts in the family. Paul would get jealous of Christina's colleagues, believing she had gone back to work to find a lover. She knew where these accusations came from, but tried to smooth things over. Over the course of a year, thanks to her hard work, persistence, and immense knowledge, she was able to climb the career ladder significantly. However, her mother-in-law had her own version of a rapid promotion. "Son, you'd better watch out when you go through doors. You might get your antlers stuck." Jokes like that had become normal in her conversations with Paul. "Mum, I already told you I don't like those kinds of insinuations." "What insinuations? I'm telling you straight. Your wife is sleeping her way to the top, and that's how she's climbing the ladder." "Mum, you're home? What are you saying?" "She has 2 university degrees. She was studying every day so she wouldn't forget what she learned during maternity leave. She even works extra from home, writing dissertations and essays for students. I earn a fraction of what she does. She even buys the presents for holidays." "She can choke on them. I don't want anything from her." The woman demonstrably threw the expensive hairdryer and shaver her son had brought her for her wedding anniversary into the bin. Mom, those weren't cheap. They cost a month of my salary. If you don't want to use them, give them to someone else. Have some mercy on Dad. He doesn't even get to see his grandchildren because of you two fighting. So what? It's not a tragedy not to see some random children. There's a whole lot of them playing in the sandpit. Go and pick one and sit with them. Sometimes Paul looked at his mother and couldn't understand how anyone could be so vile and how his father had managed to live with such a woman all those years. Mum, I forbid you from even suggesting that Daisy isn't my daughter. You can forbid things in your own home, but I'm the lady of this house. Do you want to say something? You're afraid to say a word in your own house, you're under her thumb, and you're afraid to show your antlers. You see, that snake is trying to turn you against us so you'll stop seeing your family. She's turned you against us, that monster. Mum, Paul wearily sat in a chair. Rory doesn't want to see me. I tried a few times, but he's always busy, or his wife has other plans, or they have another checkup. I don't know why they even came back. It's not like they couldn't find good doctors abroad. Stop talking like that. My little angel is trying to give us an heir. She's having treatment and she hasn't given up hope. Unlike your wife, who gives birth to God knows who, and you're happy to call them your own. You know, Christina refused to change Alex's documents and put my name on them. You had no influence on that situation. And it doesn't matter to me that he has a different surname. I love him like my own son. You love everyone like your own son, except your own family. Paul's mother wasn't about to let her least favorite son have the last word. From an early age, she had divided her sons into the smart and favorite, and the second, the failed one. Rory, her beloved, smart, and capable boy, was the model of a perfect son. He was a good student, a sportsman, a great reader, and he never talked back or upset his mother. After university, he got a very good job, and a few months later he made an even better marriage to the boss's daughter. The marriage was an unequal one, but the bride's father saw potential in his son-in-law. A year after the wedding, the young family moved abroad, where the capable Rory was put in charge of one of the company's overseas branches. The perfect life of the family was marred only by one thing. They had no children. His young wife had been to all the famous clinics, undergoing endless checkups. Rory had only allowed himself to be checked once, claiming there was nothing wrong with him. She didn't think her younger son Paul was worthy of her attention. He was disobedient, rowdy, and mischievous. He barely made it through school, and in his free time he preferred to chase pigeons in the garden rather than read a book. He was completely uninterested in anything. His parents and brother tried to influence him, but it had no effect. The mother didn't think her younger son was worthy of her attention, so she was rather cold about his idea of getting married. Everything changed when she met her future younger daughter-in-law. When his brother got married and moved abroad, Paul was in the army, so the brothers hadn't seen each other for years. Rory had no desire to change that. As soon as Paul said he was going to visit, his older brother would find 1,000 reasons to postpone his visit. Paul was hurt by this condescending attitude, but there was nothing he could do about it. One day, his father quietly told him that his oldest son and his mother had some secrets and that they concerned Paul's family. "Son, you and Christina need to be careful. They're up to something." And now, completely unexpectedly, his mother decided to change her years of anger into goodwill and visit her younger son, and not just visit, but stay the night. She didn't plan to ask her daughter-in-law for permission. She hadn't even warned her son, but had simply presented him with a fait accompli. After his father's warning, Paul was wary of his mother's initiative. However, the hardest part was convincing his wife to host such an unpleasant relative. "Christina, I told you, my mum is only staying for a couple of nights." "It's a couple of nights too many. When will you two finally stop fighting?" No one ever tried to talk to me. For years, I've been listening to a stream of insults about my infidelity, about me cheating on you, about me having Daisy with God knows who, and dumping my son on you. By the way, you knew I had a child before we got married, and it didn't bother you. If this was so important to you, why didn't you tell me everything before we got married? Because I loved him like my own son from day one. They are both equally dear to me, and people say he looks like me. Don't change the subject. I don't want to see someone who's poured so much dirt on me in my house. At the very least, I demand that she apologizes. Don't forget, this is my house too. I have the right to have my relatives over. Your mum comes over almost every day. That's because she picks the children up from nursery and takes care of them while we're at work. Or have you forgotten who we have to thank for our children being so well behaved and who takes every opportunity to praise what an amazing son-in-law she got? Paul had no answer to that. He was indeed lucky. His wife's mum helped them so much with the children, cooked for them, and took them for walks. He couldn't imagine how they would manage without her. That's why he was not against his wife paying for her mother's expenses out of her salary. Paul himself tried to help his second mother. He had even renovated her flat himself after her father passed away. Before that, the flat had been in a state of disrepair. The man himself knew that his mother's visit was a bad idea and that it would end badly. However, he couldn't back down because of his nature. You can have anyone you want over, but I don't have to even speak to her. Thankfully, the flat is big enough for us not to see each other. On the day of her mother-in-law's visit, Christina tried to stay at work for as long as possible. Her mum picked the children up from nursery and decided to keep them. Paul didn't mind, afraid his mother would say something inappropriate in front of them. Alex was a big boy now and could understand why he was being called not his own. Christina was tempted to stay at her mother's for the night as well. But her hateful mother-in-law might see it as a sign of cowardice, and Christina had never been a coward. So after staying at work for as long as possible and finishing all her tasks, she slowly walked the longest way home. She had never felt so reluctant to go home. Usually, she couldn't wait to get home to her beloved family. Today, she had to endure a serious ordeal, but she had no intention of avoiding her mother-in-law. Besides, she was on her own territory and could always show her hateful relative the door. Carefully opening the door, Christina entered the flat. It was quiet. She even thought her mother-in-law had changed her mind and hadn't come. However, a minute later, Christina heard muffled voices from the living room. Her mother-in-law and husband were talking about something. Christina had no intention of eavesdropping, but as she walked to the bathroom, she heard her mother-in-law say her name and couldn't help but listen. "I'm telling you, you're Christina." For once, the mother-in-law had used her daughter-in-law's first name, had Alex with Rory. She knew he was married and wanted to break up his family and marry him. She was demanding money to keep quiet, so his wife wouldn't find out. That's why they didn't come to your wedding. I was afraid she would ruin his life. Which wasn't normal. I saw them together several times back when they were dating. That's why I couldn't accept her. She almost ruined one son's family, and now she's after the second. If you had your own children, you'd understand. I have my own children. One more comment like that and you're going home. The buses aren't running anymore? Or are you going to throw your own mother out like a dog? However, this time, the woman wasn't there to badmouth her daughter-in-law. She had a plan, and her younger son had to be on her side. And now they have problems. They can't have children. So I thought you should give Alex to Rory and his wife. He's his son, after all, and you'll still have a girl. Or you can have another. Your soul of a wife can give birth on demand. Maybe at least your boy will be a good person. Mum, stop it. I told you I won't stand for that. Why didn't you tell me before that Alex is my nephew? How could you all know and stay silent all these years? And how could you even think of taking a child away from his mother? And that's where you'll help us. We need to get your wife declared an unfit mother. Then we can do a DNA test, prove Rory's paternity, and take the child. Unfit mother, wild lifestyle, your wife fits that description. And then you'll testify in court that she abused him, was angry with everyone, and didn't take care of the children. I'll write down what you need to say. Christina is an excellent mother. Anyone will tell you that. An excellent mother who dumps her children on her grandma. As you can see, I'm very well informed, so that's why my brother didn't want to see me. Paul tried to change the subject. Why would he want to see you? You were never friends. You were never in his league. Why would you talk to him? And that viper probably wouldn't let him see you. Everything is perfect in their family. They just don't have a child. And now they have a grown boy. You don't have to change nappies or ruin your figure with childbirth. Paul listened to his mother and couldn't believe his ears. She was talking about her grandson's fate as if he were an insignificant object. Mum, are you not interested in what I have to say about this? Or Christina? Or Alex? Who's going to ask you? The boy has a chance to grow up in a normal family with money and opportunities. What are you going to give him? Your stupid swimming and painting? Don't make me laugh. You should be grateful to your brother for doing you such a favor. But what about my brother's wife? Would she be okay with raising a child her husband had with his mistress? If my calculations are correct, he started dating Christina just a few months after his wedding. I doubt he was faithful to her either. And she didn't know he was married. That clever girl planned it all out on purpose. Christina was standing behind the door and couldn't believe what she was hearing. The whole story sounded like a cheap film. A girl gets pregnant by one brother and marries the other. How small the world was and how different the brothers were. She never thought that the perfect Rory, her husband's older brother that her mother-in-law talked about so much, would be the same Luke she had fallen in love with all those years ago. The one she had idolized, who had acted so disgustingly. She had long since stopped thinking about him. After all, if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have her son. For that alone, she could forgive him and forget about him. And now her mother-in-law had come up with a nightmarish and disgusting plan that could ruin her family and her life. She knew what Rory was capable of. It would be nothing for him to bribe someone and get all the necessary documents to take her son away. She had one last hope, the contract he had signed right after he found out about her pregnancy. But for a man like that, a piece of paper would hardly be an obstacle. Christina pressed her hands to her temples. Her blood was pounding so hard that it felt like her veins would burst. Now she understood the reason for her mother-in-law's fierce hatred for her. The old hag was afraid that her perfect son would be thrown out by his new, rich relatives. For years, she had tormented her, claiming that Christina had her daughter out of wedlock, when it turned out that both children were her own grandchildren. What a monster was sitting in her living room. They had been hiding for years that the man she had loved, who had betrayed her and whom she had tried to forget, was her husband's close relative. The only good thing was that her husband was also not in on the secret. It seemed her mother-in-law and her beloved son were keeping this information for a rainy day. But how could they have even thought of doing something like this? To take Alex from her? Christina had never doubted that her mother-in-law was completely devoid of human feelings, but she had tried for years not to think about Rory and had not expected this from him. During their last meeting, when they signed the contract, he had not expressed any desire for further contact. Perhaps the idea of the child had come from her mother-in-law, since Rory and his wife hadn't been able to have a child for years. Maybe this was how the mother-in-law wanted to save her eldest son's family without having to adopt a child from an orphanage. But the scariest part was that the woman had decided to slander her daughter-in-law, collect documents to declare her mentally unstable, and take the child. It seemed the mother-in-law didn't care that she would be ruining her younger son's family. The eldest was all that mattered to her. In any case, there was no justification for such a monstrous act, and Christina decided to put an end to the conversation. She entered the room just as her husband was running out of arguments, and wanted to just throw his mother out. In the years of his marriage to Christina, he had become so tired of his mother's constant attacks on his family that he was ready to cut her out of his life. There was no understanding or forgiveness for the monstrous proposal she had just made. Paul and his mother turned to her at the same time. Christina thought she saw relief in her husband's eyes. He no longer had to fight his mother on his own. "Get out! And don't you ever come near my house or my family again, or I'll tear you to shreds. And even if they throw me in jail, I'll get out and continue to live in a wonderful world, freed of a vile snake like you." Christina grabbed her mother-in-law by the elbow and finally let out the rage and anger that had been building up for years. "Let me go, Paul! Get this crazy woman off me!" "Mum, this is your fault. She didn't do anything to you." Her husband stood up for Christina for the first time and went against his mother. "I'll crush both of you. You'll be left with no children. I'll get you both fired and you'll lose your money and your home." The woman was screaming like a maniac, cursing her son and his wife. Christina practically dragged her mother-in-law by the collar to the landing, ignoring her screams and curses. She slammed the door shut and slid down the wall to the floor, sobbing. There had been a lot of sadness and hatred in her life, but she certainly didn't deserve this kind of treatment from her mother-in-law. Now she was crying from a sense of helplessness, knowing that this vile woman would not leave them alone. Her husband stood in the middle of the hallway, confused, not knowing what to do. Should he comfort his wife or run to calm down his mother, whose screaming could be heard throughout the entire building? The neighbors were starting to react to the screams and cries for help. "This mad woman broke my head and my arm. She insulted me with the worst words. I barely escaped from them alive. Someone please call an ambulance and the police. We can't let this go." After those words, Christina looked up at her husband, her face covered in tears, and said, "You have to choose now. Either you protect your family and do something about your mother, or you stay with her and leave forever. I'm not putting up with this anymore. Tomorrow, I'm filing a police report, and believe me, I will include all the insults, the slander, and the attempts to take my child." Paul couldn't believe his own mother was capable of such a thing. He had always felt and known that he wasn't her favorite child, just a disappointment. "Every family has a black sheep," his mother would sigh whenever his teachers complained about his poor grades and bad behavior. He just wanted her to be proud of him. He had married the most beautiful and intelligent woman, hoping his mother would appreciate it, but she had attacked Christina with such hatred, as if she had done something awful. And today, he had finally found out the reason for her attitude. He couldn't understand how his mother could have even thought of such a plan. He had loved little Alex from day one and couldn't imagine his life without him. Without a thought for his feelings, his mother had decided to save her eldest son's family by ruining her younger son's. At that moment, it felt like everything Paul had built for years came crashing down. He was about to lose half of his family, and he couldn't decide which half to pick. He was terrified of a life without his wife, daughter, and son who had turned out to be his nephew. But he was also afraid of cutting all ties with his parents and brother. Most of all, he felt sorry for his father, who his mother would certainly forbid from ever contacting him again. Taking a deep breath, Paul stepped out onto the landing, grabbed his mother by the arm, and forcefully dragged her out. As soon as they were outside, he shoved her onto a bench and let out the emotions that had been building for years. "Mom, this is my final warning. Leave my family alone. If you do even a tenth of what you planned, I swear to you, you and Rory will regret ever thinking of this. I will crush you, and believe me, I have the means to do it. Do you want me to remind you that my wife is a successful solicitor? And you wouldn't believe how many influential people bring their cars to my garage. You can be sure I'll get them all involved. And it's about time Rory's wife found out about his integrity. But perhaps it's best if her father finds out first. I hear he's quite an influential person in this city. Maybe he can influence his son-in-law. Perhaps his daughter's horns will stop growing so fast." "You wouldn't dare," his mother hissed. "Who do you think you are? You are nothing compared to your brother. You're a failure, a nobody. And yet, that nobody will protect his family. Alex is my son. I've been planning to adopt him for a long time, and now I definitely will. We have a complete, well-adjusted family." "I told you not to do that." The woman seemed to not even consider the possibility that her spineless younger son would dare to disobey her. "You won't believe this, but I have no intention of listening to you," Paul laughed. It felt like he had been silent for years and was now finally able to speak his mind. "A DNA test will prove that Rory is his father. And it will also show that we are related. Plus, Christina has a contract that your precious son signed, which states he has no claim on her child. Don't tell me you didn't know about that." "I knew, but that naive girl drew it up herself. I'd never believe it's valid." "It was notarized, so your beloved son has no claim on Alex. I will still get him for us. They need a child." And at that moment, it finally dawned on Paul. His mother had come up with this whole plan. Rory might not even know about it. It was obvious that there were big problems in his family, and his mother couldn't let go of such a lucrative opportunity. "Mum, do they even want him? Did you ask them?" Rory knows, but he's not thrilled about it. He doesn't want children. But his wife has started collecting documents to adopt Alex. He's the perfect fit. He's not some orphan with an alcoholic parent's genes. Your Christina isn't the best option either. But beggars can't be choosers. Paul was so horrified by what he was hearing that he sat on the bench, holding his head in his hands. "Mom, can you hear yourself? People aren't dolls. You can't just decide the fates of living people. Alex is still a child. Have you thought about him? He has loving parents. You want to take him from us, force him to go through a huge trauma, and then give him to people who don't even really want him? Not to mention you'll destroy our family, break dozens of laws, and spend a lot of money and effort. Is it worth it? Why don't your brother and his wife adopt a child from an orphanage? Children live there for years without a parent's love and affection. Be happy that at least one of them will get out and have a family. I didn't pay to raise a child just to feel sorry for them. Raising you was enough for me. Maybe I should have put you in an orphanage too. Maybe they would have made a man out of you." For the first time in his life, Paul realized what a monster his mother was. She was indifferent, cynical, and vile. And he had tried to make his wife get along with her. He should have cut ties with her a long time ago, but in his heart he had hoped that she would love him and be proud of him. When Daisy was born, he had hoped that the appearance of a little granddaughter would soften his mother's heart. How wrong he was. Her suspicions that Christina had cheated on him were just a cover. In reality, it was impossible to please his mother. Besides her beloved older son, she had never loved anyone. "Mum, I don't want to discuss this with you anymore. But I'm warning you, if you ever interfere in my family again, I will forget that we are related. My son and my daughter are dearer to me, and I will protect them from you with all the means available to me." He walked home with his head down. He couldn't believe that this was the beginning of one of the most difficult periods of his life. He had no doubt his mother wouldn't give up. He had to be prepared, think of everything. He and Christina had to build a strong wall to defend themselves from an enemy like his mother. When he entered the flat, his wife was still sitting on the floor in front of the door, exhausted, unable to cry. Paul lifted her and helped her to the sofa. To comfort her, he held her in his arms like a small child until she fell asleep. At that moment, he decided that he would protect this woman from all evil, even if it came in the form of his own mother. Rory had been in a bad mood all morning. Things at work weren't going well, and his father-in-law blamed him for it. For years, the man had tried to prove that he was more than just the husband of the company owner's daughter, but a great professional. Besides, he had to maintain the image of a perfect family man, which in a marriage of convenience was difficult, not to say unbearable, from the very first years. His wife, with her fantasies and unfulfilled dreams, had decided to become a volunteer. As if his mum wasn't enough of a headache, now he had to deal with this too. He had quickly figured out that the only way to get ahead in life was to use connections, and family connections were not a bad option. When Rory found out that the CEO had a daughter, he quickly calculated the shortest route to a senior management position in the company. Angelina, a nice but not very bright girl, quickly fell for the handsome employee's charm at a company event. Rory knew how to win a woman over, and he was successfully working towards his goal. A month later, the spoiled girl was eating out of his hand, and a month after that, Rory and Angelina were married. To seal the deal, he worked as hard as he could to prove to his future father-in-law that he was worthy of being a member of the family. However, his new relative was in no rush to entrust his son-in-law with any important position. The glamorous and well-groomed woman had only one flaw that annoyed Rory terribly. She desperately wanted to have children, and despite all her efforts, she couldn't fulfill that wish. "My love, you're so young. Why do you want to ruin your figure with pregnancy? I can buy you some trendy dog or another stylish pet to take care of. A baby means screaming, snot, and poo. Why would you want that? I'll hire a nanny." "No nannies. I intend to raise our child myself." "Have you forgotten? I'm a certified child psychologist." "I know what your dad had to pay for that degree," Rory thought to himself, but said aloud, "I don't doubt your skills, but I think we can have children later, maybe when we're 35 or 40. Are you out of your mind? The older the mother, the higher the chance of having a child with abnormalities. Are you prepared to take responsibility for having a child like that?" "I wasn't planning on taking responsibility for any child," the young husband thought to himself and said aloud, "My love, we can't have a sick child. We're both healthy and take good care of ourselves." It had only been about a year since their lavish wedding, and the young husband had already been spotted in the company of a glamorous beauty, then another and another. While Angelina was undergoing one checkup after another, her loving husband was actively cheating on her. Finally, her father's patience ran out, and he sent the young couple abroad, saying they needed to get checked by the best specialist. Rory was also offered to head one of the European offices, the position he had dreamed of for so long. In reality, it was a sham. The head of the office had no right to make decisions or sign documents, and had to consult with his deputy on all important matters. The young woman's father could have easily destroyed his son-in-law and told his daughter about all his affairs, but he had raised her alone. His wife had passed away when Angelina was not even 3. Trying to be both a mum and a dad, the man had tried to protect his beloved child from all misery. He didn't have the strength to tell her that her beloved husband didn't love her and had married her for money. When the ambitious young man demanded more authority, he was given evidence of his wild life in the city. "Do you recognize at least 5 different girls here? two of them are not exactly respectable. How do you think your wife will react to these pictures? I can prove they are fakes, and she won't leave me. Rory tried to be brave, but he would never forget the shock of seeing those photos. He could lose everything he had worked for so hard in a split second. He calmed down instantly, and for a while was deliberately attentive and kind to his wife, going with her to endless checkups and getting countless tests done. His wife's strong desire for a child infuriated Rory, who had no plans to burden his life with such a nuisance. Crying, silly, and always demanding attention creatures didn't evoke any affection or sympathy in him. He had no intention of ruining his life with a child. Besides, he didn't worry about who would bring him a glass of water when he was old. He planned to make enough money in his lifetime to pay for both a glass and a carer to bring it to him. In general, he didn't look so far into the future. Everything in his life came easily. From a very early age, he was taught that his mere presence was a source of happiness and celebration. His mother adored him, and with the birth of his second son, she had a daily reason to praise the first and demean the second. Over time, Rory began to treat his brother like a servant, limited and simple-minded. Paul was a toy in his brother's hands, and their mother never stopped supporting Rory in his desire for wealth and luxury. And recently, his mom had floored him with an incredible piece of news. It turned out she had come up with a solution for his and Angelina's problem. The moment his mother solemnly announced her plan, Rory thought she had completely lost her mind. It turned out that one of his ex-girlfriends had a child. He vaguely remembered that he had sent a naive girl for an abortion, but she had refused, and now his mother had decided to get this child so he and Angelina could adopt him. His beloved wife had told her mother-in-law that she wanted to adopt a child, and her mother-in-law had conveniently remembered that 5 years ago her son had told her about a problem. His pregnant girlfriend was going to have the baby. It seemed his mother had been following that girl, but then Rory had problems, and his father-in-law had sent him and his wife abroad. They hadn't even come home for his younger brother's wedding. His mother had convinced them that the wedding wasn't worth their attention. And now his mother had decided to crush him with more good news. Son, I haven't told you everything. You and your angel can adopt not some random child with unknown genetics, but your own son. Mom, are you all right? His voice was firm and harsh. You don't understand? I'm talking about the child that girl had. Remember you told me before you left that some girl was expecting your baby and had refused the money you gave her to get rid of it, and that you don't speak to her? I'd rather not, but I have to, the woman had exclaimed with hatred. That clever brat is married to your brother? Are you joking? How is that possible? I don't know. He seemed to have a crush on her in school, and then he was in the army, and then they met again somewhere, and he continued to chase her. She ignored him completely in school, but after she had the baby, she must have become less picky. They got married quickly. She probably had a daughter, so he wouldn't run away. Enough of this interesting story about my brother's family life. Get to the point. Well, your brother and his wild wife have another child. We can take the older one, and you and your angel can adopt him. Mom, you talk about him as if he's a kitten. Besides, why would I want proof of my infidelity? My father-in-law will destroy me. I'll help you. We'll take him from them, put him in an orphanage, and then you and your wife can adopt him and go back abroad. His mother beamed with pride. She thought her plan was perfect. She had tried so hard and had put all her effort into making her beloved son happy. That day, he managed to convince her that the idea was completely insane. His wife should never find out that he had cheated on her. She naively believed he loved her. It seemed his mother calmed down, but only for a week. As it turned out, she had spent that time running around to various organizations that had the authority to take a child away from his parents. All she had to do was prove that Paul and Christina were terrible parents, that Alex's life was in danger, and that the child had to be immediately taken to an orphanage. The woman didn't even think that since her son had 2 children, both could be taken away. She only cared about one grandson, and only as glue to hold her eldest son's happy marriage together. A marriage that only seemed happy from the outside. Even the mother knew that her son didn't care for his wife at all. At the time, no one paid any attention to the woman's intense desire to fulfill her plan. Later, her relatives would bitterly regret it. After hearing what his mother had planned, Rory spent several days frantically trying to distract her. He forbade his wife from speaking to his mother, claiming she was having health problems. "You shouldn't talk to my mum for a while. She's having some kind of strange seasonal episode. She must have been worried a lot recently, and your news about adopting a child seems to have pushed her over the edge. Is it serious? Maybe she needs a doctor? I'll pay for any specialist." You don't need to pay for anything. She just sometimes gets strange ideas in her head, and she presents them as real events. It's happened before. Don't pay her any mind, okay? "I don't know. I'm worried about her. She's always so kind and nice." "If only those who know her could hear you," Rory muttered. "Did you say something?" "Nothing, just that you look stunning today." "Oh, you smooth talker." Even though the man didn't feel any loving or romantic feelings for his wife, he was a master at faking them, so much so that she lived in the happy certainty that she had the most loving, gentle, and attentive husband. For complete happiness, all she needed was a child. All the doctors told her that she was perfectly healthy and had no medical issues with conception. That meant the problem was with her husband. However, after a year of trying, even he gave up and underwent a full examination. He was also perfectly healthy. The doctors said that sometimes it just happens, and they should just relax and wait. But Angelina couldn't relax. A child was slowly becoming an obsession. One day, scrolling through social media, she came across a group where adoptive parents were sharing the details of their new life. A life that had a place for a stranger's child who had become their own. The photos and videos showed how frozen, withdrawn, and unemotional children gradually thawed, blossomed, started to smile, and became normal, cheerful little ones. That day, the idea of adoption didn't really stick with her. After all, she and her husband were young and healthy, and all they needed to do was wait, as the doctors said. But something made her go back to that group every day. She started to recognize many of the children and could see their progress. And then one day, she heard the story of a mum who had been trying to get pregnant for a long time, decided to adopt, and in the process of getting the paperwork done, found out she was pregnant. Angelina went through mountains of information about this phenomenon, which, as it turned out, was not so rare, and she saw it as a solution. Plus, 2 children meant twice as much joy. Even if she couldn't have her own, she would still have an adopted child who also needed a family, care, love, and support. She decided to share her thoughts with her husband, but he was not impressed. He was willing to have a child of his own, but a strange adopted one was out of the question. Angelina's father also had an unexpectedly strong opinion on the matter, seeing it as another one of his daughter's whims. "My dear, you'll get bored. You'll get bored of spending time on a child who is, in essence, a stranger. You won't find your own features or your husband's features in him. He'll scream, you'll get tired, and in the end, you'll want to give him back." It's not as rosy as it sounds. For every one happy adoptive family, there are 5, if not 10, unhappy ones who regret their decision. "You're wrong. I'm being realistic about my own strength. I'm not planning on taking in a child with a disability, but that's only because you all would be against it. My abilities are enough for that. When you were a child, you couldn't even take care of a cat. We couldn't keep up with buying new pets for you. I understand you want a child, but this is more like a whim that you haven't had fulfilled, and now you're being stubborn. Be honest with yourself. A child is not a doll or a hamster that you can take, play with, and give back to the orphanage. I will not allow this." "Fine, then I will volunteer at the children's home to get some practice." "Are you out of your mind? If you have nothing to do, then get a job. I'll hire you at my farm." "Dad, I already work for you. Have you forgotten?" "That's right, then get to work." "Fine. And with the money I earn, I will buy nappies and milk formula for the children." Her husband and father, used to seeing her as nothing more than a pretty doll without much intelligence, were not expecting such stubbornness. The woman was truly determined to test her willpower. She found an organization that worked with a children's home on a volunteer basis. The volunteers, mostly young people, not only helped with collecting the necessary supplies and food, but also often worked shifts with the nurses. They helped bathe and change the babies who had been left without a mother, or simply carried them in their arms. Angelina decided to go in the evenings and read bedtime stories to the little ones. Even though the ward was for the youngest babies, she knew how important this bedtime ritual was. She didn't remember her own mum well, but she clearly remembered that she would read to her every day. One day, on her way home from a shift, she decided to walk and saw a woman with 2 children on a bench near her house. A boy and a girl, about 5 and 3, were so sweet and charming. They were both excitedly telling their mum about the things that happened at nursery, and their mum was listening carefully and asking questions. Angelina was so captivated by the scene that she stopped nearby. She liked this family so much that she decided to go over and meet them. She didn't usually do that, but something inside her made her do it. "Hello, I couldn't walk past without admiring you all. You're such a beautiful family." The children hid behind their mum, not used to so much attention from strangers. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." "It's fine, they're just very shy." The children's mum was about Angelina's age. "I could have children this age by now." She thought sadly and said aloud, "My name is Angelina. I volunteer at a children's home, and I decided to take a little walk and saw you. My name is Christina, and I'm Alex." The boy had clearly become braver and decided to introduce himself. The handsome, dark-haired, blue-eyed boy reminded her of someone very familiar, but she couldn't place who. She had a good memory for faces, but she always struggled with names and would often take a long time to remember how she knew a person she had met by chance. But this was a completely different feeling. She had never met the boy before, but his features were familiar. While she was thinking, a man came over to the family, and Angelina realized who the boy reminded her of. It was Paul, her husband's brother. She couldn't understand why the brothers had stopped talking years ago. She had never met him. When she and Rory got married, Paul was in the army, and then they moved abroad and had only recently returned. All this time, she had only seen her husband's brother in photos and knew nothing about his family. When she and her husband had visited his parents, the subject of her brother-in-law's family was carefully avoided. What's wrong with them? She thought. They were a beautiful, young, and friendly family with wonderful children. Why had her mother-in-law, who was always so nice to her, never mentioned her grandchildren? Paul and Christina didn't know who she was. Even if they had seen a photo of her and her husband, they would have probably not recognized her now, without makeup and with her hair tied up, dressed simply. At that moment, her phone rang, and Angelina waved goodbye to her new acquaintances and walked away to the playground. It was Rory. "My love, where did you go? You're not answering your phone. I'm so worried. Did something happen?" I turned my phone off while I was putting the kids to bed. Nothing happened. "Hey, where are you right now? At work? I'm going to be late, but I was planning something with you tonight." Her husband's voice became quiet and mysterious. "I was hoping to spend some alone time with you." "Who are you going to visit?" "I know them. I think you do too. It's your brother's family." "No!" Rory didn't have time to think before blurting out his answer. "Why?" Angelina was confused by his quick and sharp reaction. "I just saw them. They have such adorable children. The boy is the spitting image of you." "Why would he look like me?" Rory realized his voice might give him away. It was on the verge of hysteria. He decided she had found out everything and wondered why she had gone to that children's home. It was time to put a stop to this adoption nonsense. He didn't need children, his or anyone else's, because he's his uncle, after all. Rory sighed with relief. She didn't know anything. "Did my mum call you today?" he asked cautiously, afraid to hear that she had already told his wife about her wonderful idea to adopt the boy who looked so much like Rory. "No, was she supposed to? Maybe we should visit her today too? We haven't seen her in a while." Angelina was genuinely surprised by her in-laws' unwillingness to socialize with each other. "Listen, I have a great idea. Let's have a big family dinner tomorrow. We'll invite my dad, your parents, your brother, and his family. We've never even met them. Isn't that weird? You're brothers, but you haven't seen each other for years. Christina and I only met today for the first time, but we've been relatives for years. I would love to spend time with your nephews. Alex is a beautiful boy, and his sister is simply charming. I didn't even get a chance to ask her name." "Daisy. Mum says she looks nothing like my brother." Rory said distractedly, trying to change the subject and distract his wife from her wonderful idea of getting his mother, his father-in-law, and his ex-lover, with his illegitimate child, together in one room. A slug on a hot pan would have a better chance of survival than he did. But she's the spitting image of her mum. Christina is a very beautiful and young woman, by the way. I never would have guessed that she had such grown-up children at such a young age. She's your age, love. I miss you so much. Let's spend the evening alone. We haven't been out in so long. You don't want me to meet your relatives? She asked him directly. My wife and brother have a very strained relationship. She never accepted his choice. Besides, Mum isn't even sure that their daughter is his. It's a whole long story, and I don't want to get you and your father involved. It seems he's not too happy with me anyway. Why do you say that? Dad always speaks so highly of you. Praising me is one thing. Giving me an important position is another. By the way, you haven't told me when you're coming home. Let me send a driver for you. Okay, I'll be waiting, Angelina replied, giving in to his momentary request. She decided to go back to her husband's brother's family and get to know them. The children were still playing on the playground, and the parents were sitting on a bench having an intense discussion. As she got closer, she heard a phrase, "They won't be able to do it. It's not that easy to take a child away." Who could even come up with such a horrifying idea to take children away from their parents? She thought. Hello again. I didn't get to introduce myself. I was distracted by a phone call. Good evening, Paul and Christina said in unison, not quite understanding what this woman wanted from them. My name is Angelina. I'm Rory's wife, your brother. The woman decided to introduce herself directly. The couple's faces showed the same terrified and hostile expression. They looked at each other and almost in unison said, "You won't be able to take him. We won't allow it." After that, Christina rushed to the playground to get her children, and Paul turned to a bewildered Angelina and repeated, "We won't give Alex to you. He is our son, no matter what your mother says." I don't understand what you're talking about. Why are you talking to me like this? I'm not going to take anyone away from you. I just recognized you and wanted to invite you to dinner and get to know you. We're close relatives but have never met in person. It seems strange to me, so I decided to use the opportunity to get to know you. I have no bad intentions, I swear to you. She must have sounded very convincing. Paul looked at his wife, who had just come back, and said, "They must have hidden the plan from her." Then he turned to his sister-in-law and offered, "Come, and we'll tell you why we don't talk to our parents and brother." Surprisingly, the problems brought Paul and Christina closer. He stopped being jealous of her, and she felt her husband's immense support. Now they were a real, close-knit family. The conversation took the whole evening. While Christina changed and fed the little ones, Paul and Angelina sat in the kitchen. Then his wife put on some cartoons for the children and joined them. Angelina was horrified by what she heard. Her entire perfect world was a lie. Her husband had been cheating on her for years, and as for her mother-in-law, she didn't even want to think about her. How lucky she was that she had decided to stop by their house today. Despite the horror of the story, she had no reason not to believe them. There was too much evidence. But most of all, she was shocked by her mother-in-law's cynicism. She wanted to force Angelina to raise a child that her husband had had with his mistress. Under the glossy surface of her and Rory's happy marriage, she was going to hide so many broken lives. She looked at the children, who were watching cartoons so intently. Alex was the spitting image of her husband. His eyes, hair, the shape of his head. It was amazing how much a child could look like a father who didn't want him at all. Her husband called her several times, but she ignored his calls and then turned her phone off completely. She didn't want to see or hear anyone, but she was also scared to be alone. Then an idea came to her. "Guys, can I stay with you tonight? I can't go home and I don't want to go to my dad's." "Of course you can stay. You're the only one who told me the truth about everything, and we're not strangers anymore, with all these shared secrets." The woman smiled sadly and went out to the balcony. She needed to get some air and get her thoughts in order. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, or rather, it felt like they were trying to knock it off its hinges. Paul looked through the peephole and saw his furious brother on the stairs. He opened the door and stepped out, not letting Rory into the flat. "Are you crazy, knocking like that? We have little children sleeping inside. Where is my wife?" Rory was clearly worried. His driver had called to say that Angelina wasn't at the address she had given him, which meant she had gone to talk to his brother. The fact that she hadn't answered his calls for several hours only confirmed his suspicion. Just in case, Rory had called her dad and a couple of her friends. She wasn't at any of those places, and no one had seen her. After getting his brother's address from his mother, Rory rushed to find his wife, knowing full well that today would most likely be the last day of his life, his career, and everything he had. The flat, the car, the holidays, all of it was only thanks to his wife. Strangely, he felt no regret. The lie felt like a huge snowbank on top of him, not allowing him to live normally. Now that mountain of snow was about to come crashing down. What would be left after this? He would have to wait and see. She's here, but it's best if you don't see each other right now. What exactly does she know? Everything, his brother said simply and continued. About you cheating, about Alex being your son, and about Mum deciding to take him from us and give him to you. Why did you tell her all that? There was no anger in Rory's voice, only immense weariness. Don't you think she deserved to know? She really loves you, and she wanted a child from you, not for her own whim. Why did you do this to her? Why did you all do this to her? You know, I didn't even notice how difficult things were for Christina all these years because of my mum. If you knew how much she had to go through. I'm almost glad that Mum came up with this crazy adoption plan. It brought us closer. If you love your wife, fight for her, ask for forgiveness, beg her to stay. But if you only need her to achieve your goals, then don't you ever go near her again. She's strong. It will hurt, and she'll be sad, but she'll get through it. How do you know all this? You don't know her. You're the one who doesn't know her. We found out more about her in a few hours than you did in 7 years. I want to talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to you. She's staying here tonight. If she's ready tomorrow, I'll call you. Alex really looks like me? Yes, he does. But if you even try to take him from me or tell him the truth, I will crush you. The quiet confidence with which his brother said these words made Rory realize that his mother's plan had been doomed from the start. His brother had become the best father Alex could have ever asked for. He even felt a pang of jealousy. His son would grow up right in front of him, with no possibility of ever knowing the truth. We're getting the paperwork changed. Alex will be my son now. I wouldn't even recommend you get a DNA test. It won't help you. I was against the idea my mother came up with from the beginning. She seems to have serious mental problems. You should get her to see a specialist. Then you get her to see one. I don't want to see her again. Dad is a different story. He was very happy to see us the other day and finally met his grandchildren. But as for her, she doesn't exist for us anymore. She made Christina's life a living hell for years. And she thought of me as a nobody from the day I was born. We haven't lost anything. In fact, we've gained. Dad dared to go against her. If you want, you can come over sometimes. But I'm warning you, if you even hint to Alex about who you are, then no, I'm his uncle. And I have no intention of claiming more than that. It seems there is a black sheep in our family after all. It's obvious now that you're the one. For the first time in his life, Rory didn't want to be arrogant and condescending to his brother. He suddenly felt jealous. He had a beloved and loving wife, children, and a cozy home. Even his wife had found a safe place and comfort here. But for him, his own brother, there was no place. The abyss between them was too wide and too deep. I'll try to talk to her. Paul seemed to read his brother's mind. But you shouldn't meet right now. You also need to think about what to do next. Things will never be the same again. But if you only need her for her money and her father's connections, at least be honest with her. You can succeed in life without her father and his position. His brother said that last sentence to give him some support, but it echoed in his head all night long. In the morning, Angelina went to her friend's house in the countryside, not telling anyone where she was except for Paul and Christina. That day, the parents had to work late, so Grandma was going to pick the children up from nursery. The children and their grandma were happily walking down the path, reminiscing about the day, sharing news and laughing. The other grandma suddenly appeared in front of them. She roughly grabbed the boy by the arm and pulled him towards her, trying to break his hold on his grandma's hand. "Come here, boy. Let go of him. He's supposed to be somewhere else right now." The woman was, to put it mildly, not in the best of moods. "What are you doing? Let go of Alex." Christina's mum desperately looked around for help. They were only a few meters from their house. At that moment, she saw a woman sitting on a bench at the playground and decided to call out to her for help. "Help! This crazy woman is trying to take my grandson." The woman turned around and, as if she recognized them, quickly ran over. However, Paul's mother saw the woman and her face changed instantly. "My sweet angel, What are you doing here? Rory has been looking for you for a whole day. Auntie Angelina, you're back. Stay with us again tonight. You're so much fun to be with." The children hugged her. Angelina pulled her mother-in-law's hand off the boy and addressed her husband's relative. "And he won't find me. I filed for divorce and packed his things. I already took them to your flat. Your son didn't even ask why." "What documents, my dear? What are you talking about? You two love each other so much." "I did love him, but your son is completely devoid of any feelings. Don't try to persuade me. I know everything. I know that Rory has a child." The woman gave the boy, who was standing between the two grandmas and couldn't understand what was happening, a meaningful look. "And I know about all his other deeds. This is all them. It's my useless son Paul and his immoral wife. They turned you against me and Rory. I'll show them. They'll crawl back to me on their knees." After saying those words, the woman suddenly made a horrifying face, clutched her heart, and fell. After a heart attack that left the woman bedridden for almost a year, Paul and Rory's mother didn't go home. She was transferred to a specialized institution with signs of mental illness due to severe stress. The main factor that had affected her mental health was the breakup of her eldest son's family. The ex-daughter-in-law became a friend to the younger son's family. She continued to volunteer and worked as a child psychologist. It was this job that gave her everything she had ever dreamed of: a loving husband and a little daughter. If you'd like to adjust the tone of the story or explore a different part of the narrative, just let me know. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on the video when it's done.